Zooming with your feet is one of the biggest lies in photography. I don't know where the saying started from, but it is fundamentally incorrect. It's almost a reverse of what is actually true. And I want to talk to you about this because it is so important. And this is one of the biggest misunderstandings that has a huge impact on photographers' work. Now, the reason I came to make this video is because we're doing a really in-depth video. So if you like this, but you want to go more nerdy, over on Studio Access, we're working on that at the moment to launch it because there's so many misunderstandings on equipment on the internet that we need to simplify it all and make it all factually correct in one place. The other reason is I recently made a video about why I think zoom lenses are now so good, and loads of people were saying, I just use a prime and zoom with my feet. Now, back in yonder year when I was, and let me just make this very clear, I have been a portrait and documentary photographer for longer than I've been a still life photographer. I just wasn't on the internet when I used to do those things. Here I am with my 28mm lens, and I zoomed with my feet. And I used to say I'll zoom with my feet, but the thing is, I wasn't, and I didn't, and if I did, it was wrong. But let's put that to bed for a minute. So we've got this. Let's picture the scene. I'm taking a picture of Teddy, who's been roaming around the studio all day, but is now just deactivated. And I want to get closer, so I zoom with my feet. The other option is, I'm standing there and I'm at 50mm and I want to get closer, so I zoom with my lens. Both of these two actions do completely different things. Whether you are a wildlife, landscape, still life, portrait, whatever photographer, understanding the difference is key. And yes, sometimes you have to zoom with your lens because that bird you're trying to photograph is miles away. Sometimes you have to zoom with your feet because you bought the wrong lens. But most of the time, that is not the case, and you do have choices and you need to make the correct choices. Now, what I'd like you to do is just look over here, this light near my head. I'm currently at 18mm. What I'm going to do is zoom into my face. I'm going to zoom with my lens. Now, apart from me being way too close for you, you'll notice, there it is, this is at the same point as it was on a wider thing. Everything relative to me is in the same place. The only thing that's changed is I've got bigger, you've cropped in. Not cropping in on a losing resolution way, you've zoomed in and cropped in. Now, there are a whole heap of other things going on here, but that's not for this video. So that's what zooming does. It comes in closer. Now that can be used in many great ways. If I don't want all of this background distracting me, I will zoom in. Now, I do want all this background here because I want you to go, look, he's got all this kit. He probably knows what he's doing because let's be honest, that is the assumption. You'd be amazed at how little I do know. However, that is zooming. Now, zooming with your feet is different. Let's get closer, zooming with my feet. Come here. I would say that's a similar crop from what I remember. However, look here, look, this has moved. This is all moved. The background's all moved. I'm as close. There's a bit of distortion going on here because we have become physically closer. But again, that's for everyone's Studio Access because that's misunderstood drastically. The depth of field is different because we're focusing closer, not because of the focal length in this instance. And we're in a different position. Let's zoom out with our feet so we can do that as well. You are now all the way back. The relationship has changed. The background has changed. Now, this is quite a small room. This is not a huge studio. So imagine the difference out on location. Having the difference, knowing the difference is very important because what we've done here are two entirely different things. Now, here's where it becomes practical and where you actually utilize it. For example, in my studio, I use two lenses for my still life work, a 50mm and a 90mm. One's a bit wide, so I'm on medium format, and one's a bit long. Not as long as 90 sounds, it's more like the 60-70mm end. Anyway, that's what we've got. If I want to throw out the background, and again, there's other reasons I would choose this, but this video is not about those. If I want to throw the background massive, I would get the wide lens and come up close, because sometimes we want to have that hero shot up front and a huge background. If I want to bring the background away from me, close it down, I will use the longer lens. Now, of course, we zoom with our feet to do this, but we also choose a focal length to go with it. And this is why I don't like zooms, despite having just said I do. The reason I dislike them is because there are too many focal lengths. There are too many. At least when I'm using a 50 and a 90, I know what I'm getting. And if I go, right, we want it like this, put the 50 on, it will give us that look. We'll come in close. The background will look thrown out because of the focal length. Or we can come back and it will flatten the image. We can add drama or take away drama with zooming with our feet because that's perspective. Or we can zoom the lens to crop in closer. Okay, so we've got lens zooming, cropping in and out, and in and out zooming, and we've got coming forwards and backwards, changing the perspective. And that is the big difference between these two. Zooming with your feet is changing your image's perspective. Zooming with your lens is cropping. Knowing when to use it and when to pair that usage with the right focal length is key. And this is one of the great arguments for prime lenses. If you use a prime lens, you know what you have. Now, there's a whole host of other reasons to use a prime lens, because if you have a 50mm prime lens and a zoom which covers that plus more, the characteristics of the lens change throughout the zoom range, and you have to understand all of those when you're doing incredibly technical work. Of course, if you're shooting a wedding, you just want to be able to go, let's go wide and zoom with our feet, let's go tele and zoom with our lens, or let's go wide and zoom out, but keep where we are, not change perspective, and then, all these different things. I'm sure you've all seen the shots on Stanley Kubrick's films, or in Jaws, I think it was, where the camera pulls back and the lens zooms, and it's the mixture of lens moving and zooming and all the rest of it, the perspective shifts. That's a great example of these sorts of things. Very cool stuff. But knowing when to utilize it, that is the difference between a professional and an amateur photographer. Professionals understand this is when we're going to use it. And of course, I know in the comments people go, yeah, but what about these other factors? There are many, many other factors. But understanding the simple point that zooming is cropping, zooming with your feet is perspective shifting, will open up a whole new world of how you look at your camera equipment.